After the massive success of the last Warhammer Fantasy Iceberg video, I got straight to work on the new video. Unfortunately, I ran into a few distractions and was very busy between the first video and this one. Ah! Ah!
There's one up top.
Oh my god, I fucking
Did you even
missed.
see him?
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, behind you!
Ah! Without further ado, we will get into the next level of the iceberg, starting with...
So that's 3, 4, 5 hits.
Okay, I'm gonna roll my saving throw, which is 3+.
What in the actual f*** are you guys doing?
Warmaster is to Warhammer Fantasy as Legion's Titanicus is to Warhammer 40k, as in it's a whole different system using smaller but more models per unit to simulate much larger battles in the Warhammer Fantasy setting. The system used 10 to 12mm minis. The original release first appeared in 2000, with an online supplement appearing in 2006, adding in your typical armies such as Dark Elves, Skaven, Vampires, but also armies that never saw any real release in the normal tabletop game, like Kislev and Araby. Before that, however, in 2005, Games Workshop released 2 spin-off games under the Warmaster banner, called Warmaster Battle for the Five Kingdoms, a Lord of the Rings tabletop game, and Warmaster Ancients, that simulated battles from early biblical periods to 1066 CE. We'll get back to that one. Games Workshop quit producing products for Warmaster in 2013. I do wonder what they had planned for Fantasy in 2014. Must have been good. Today, Warmaster has a dedicated online community creating and updating their own rules and releases. I'll link a video to the Warmaster podcast. They did a great video on a game between ogres and tomb kings.
No, on second thoughts, let's not go to Camelot. It is a silly place.
This is an extra entry I decided to add myself. While doing research for Warmaster, I ran into Warmaster Ancients, and after doing some more digging, I discovered Warhammer Historical, a publishing wing for Games Workshop that produced minis and rules for historical war games. They had all sorts of game systems, such as the aforementioned Warhammer Ancients, focused on ancient warfare, to the English Civil War and up to the Great War. Supposedly, from a leaked email, it was discovered Warhammer Historical fell under the umbrella of Forge World in 2010, finally being fully shut down 2 years later in 2012. Half-orcs were a race only ever mentioned in the Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game. They are either half-orc, half-human hybrids, or a different kind of goblin or hobgoblin that inhabited the eastern steppes, a vast land north of Cathay, aka Fantasy Mongolia. Just like their full-blooded cousins, they are a mean, violent race that regularly turns to banditry and thievery, and on occasion hired as mercenaries. Of course, this all comes from Warhammer Fantasy role-playing, and a majority of the lore there has weird non-canon tidbits like dwarf wizards, so it's safe to say that these guys are not canon.
Something your eyes just can't believe. In Korean, that word is and it's like wow, but more.
However, in a Warhammer community post on the 22nd of July 2021, while talking about the upcoming Warhammer Fantasy reboot The Old World, Games Workshop added this line. Clearly, at this time, Kislev was a vast empire indeed, its territories encompassing lands said by some to be haunted by hobgoblins, centaurs, and half-orcs. I almost wrote these guys off as non-canon. You gotta hang that little nugget in front of me.
Do what you want, cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate.
I'm going to assume this is talking about the tabletop game and not the shitty PC game. Man of War is an old, out-of-print spin-off game featuring naval warfare in the Warhammer setting. Originally published in 1993, Man of War was a sort of pet project for a game designer for Games Workshop, Nigel Steelman, who wrote several army books for 3rd, 4th, and 5th edition. The game featured navies from the Empire, Bretonnia, Dwarves, Orcs, as well as the High and Dark Elves. Later on, expansions of Man of War in the form of Plague Fleet was released, which expanded on the rules for Chaos, Skaven, and even Chaos Dwarves. Sea of Blood was the final expansion, which added flying units as well as Norska and a neutral sea monsters unit that could be added to any fleet as allies regardless of faction. Man of War must not have done so well as it was discontinued 2 years after launch in 1995, but Games Workshop is notoriously for randomly dropping support for the spin-off game, so it's really hard to say.
Captain!
Yeah?
If you are interested, I will leave a link below for Crown and Command Games, who did a very entertaining battle report for Man of War featuring the Empire versus Chaos.
I am the Pirate King.
Oh boy. Dreadfleet was Games Workshop's attempt to sort of Frankenstein Man of War back from the dead, possibly for a quick buck from fans of the original Man of War. Instead of having multiple navies battle it out on the high seas, Dreadfleet came with only 2 fleets. On the evil side, you got Count Noculus piloting the Bloody Reaver, a Tomb King ship with a pyramid on top because they really want you to know that these guys are undead Egyptians, a ghost ship levitating over the water, an undead sea monster somehow piloted by the Skaven, and a mechanical chaos dwarf Kraken. Badass. On the other side, you had an Empire flagship, a High Elf ship, a dwarf submarine, an Araby ship captained by a genie, and a pirate ship captained by Aranessa's Saltspite. Yes, that Aranessa's Saltspite, the one legendary lord nobody cares about.
Because right now, I just don't recommend even playing her. I'd give Aranessa a complete miss. It is not a fun campaign. It's just boring. On all difficulties, in my opinion.
Just like Man of War, the gameplay mostly consists of rolling dice to shoot and board your opponent's ships. However, there is a card system to it that adds a bit of randomness to every game, which was one of the most complained about systems in this game, as there will be times where you pull a fate card before the game even begins and just sort of blow up your own ship, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right. That is
what's up here? 1-3.
So 1-3.
Uh-oh.
Any Dreadfleet warship within 18 inches of the small skull next to the
marker.
marker.
That's both of mine, I think.
Yeah.
Oh.
Must draw damage cards until a hull damage
card. Oh, what the fuck? We've only got 3 hull points. And we've barely started.
Here we go.
Hull damage. So both my ships are 1/3 dead before the game begins. And what happens to the wind?
And the wind is now over here, blowing at a wind speed of 6.
It's all the way over there?
Yeah.
The Yogscast did a mini-series on the game, as well as Angry Joe, who did a much better job at explaining the rules, playing a full game, and giving their thoughts and opinions on the game itself. Araby is a human civilization along the northern coast of the Southlands. Wow, say that 5 times fast. Quite obviously, they are a fantastical representation and mixture of the Arabic, Turkish, and North African cultures in the Warhammer fantasy setting. They are a very mercantile people, with trade routes all over the world. Their cities are extravagant and very wealthy, with markets bustling with customers. If you want an exotic product, then Araby's markets are where you'll find it. So, a quick summary of magic. All magic units get their powers from chaos and manifest it in the physical realm. And in the Warhammer setting, there are 2 massive fuck-off portals to the Chaos Realms on the north and south poles. The closer you are to these poles, the stronger your magic will be. Araby, being situated along the equator, isn't really close to either, so magic users are harder to come by, but that doesn't mean there are none. In fact, there are a special type of creature called a djinn, or genie. These genies are theorized to be a type of demon, and the common people of Araby sometimes worship them as a sort of god or spirit. However, they are not all powerful, as skilled sorcerers are able to lock genies in magical cages, boxes, and even crystals. Yeah, we're getting into some real Aladdin shit here. Never said Games Workshop was original.
Today's subject is slavery.
Yeah, if we're going to talk about Araby, we're going to have to talk about their slave trade. Araby imports and exports slaves from all over the world. They do this so much and so effectively that the city of Lashik is called the slave capital of the world. Think about that for a second. Your slave economy is so large that you're considered the slave capital of the world, while a civilization like the Dark Elves exist, whose entire society, economy, and sacrificial rituals are reliant on slaves. They are such prolific slavers that they travel all the way to Norska and trade with the Norskins in order to buy large shipments of slaves to bring back to Araby.
Look at this dude. Wait till you see the... No, 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 no.
There is nothing about this I understand.
Wow, talk about a vague entry. Obviously, I'm not the author of this Iceberg, so I can't know for sure what this entry is talking about. However, I did find a few books I wanted to talk about. Ravening Hordes was released in 1987 for the 2nd edition. It contains special rules as well as a set of army lists. These army lists includes the Empire, Dwarves, Dark Elves, Chaos, Undead, Orcs, just Elves, Skaven, followed by Norska, and then Nippon. Yeah, that Nippon, the fantasy Japan that only has like a paragraph of lore. A year later, in 1988, Warhammer Siege was released, a 140-page rulebook all about siege warfare, and how to have siege battles in the Warhammer Fantasy setting. The rules explained how to set up a castle, movement and combat within the castle, but also some interesting rules like fires breaking out within the fort, as well as foraging and supplies in your castle, and mechanics for siege towers, battering rams, and other siege equipment. And lastly, we have the Realm of Chaos books that I covered in last episode. Just go watch that. I'm not sure how obscure these are, but I think these were the most interesting.
Warman, der cowards, psychopath.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
The Famir are a Cyclops swamp-dwelling creature that used to be the primary worshippers and favored race of Chaos. That is, until the Chaos Gods became more interested in humankind. They still exist, but Beastmen are treated better by Games Workshop and are really low on the Chaos Totem Pole. They mostly inhabit the bogs and swamps of the wasteland, north-ish of Marienburg, and use magic to shroud the primitive fortresses in a thick fog that not even the sun can pierce the clouds. Also, they supposedly have the knowledge on how to summon and control any demon they want, but this isn't confirmed. The Famir never had much of an impact on the setting, mostly just hiding in their swamp fortresses, sometimes raiding Empire settlements alongside Norscan raiders. They were mentioned all the way up until 8th edition, and once during the start of Age of Sigmar, even getting a Forge World model and rules. Whether they are still canon in AOS, I can't really say. In the early 90s, Games Workshop had a record labeled called Warhammer Records. Original, right? With only one band under them called D-Rock, who was a British rock band in 1991. The band released its only album called Oblivion, featuring a Space Marine from the Space Marine chapter of, let's go with Black Templars. Interestingly, the lead guitarist Brian May of Queen, yes, that Queen, who played in 2 of the songs on the record called Get Out of My Way and Red Planet Blues. This is not the first time GW dipped their toes into the music industry. They collaborated with death metal band Bolt Thrower and released an album called Realm of Chaos, but it was released under Earache Records. It's, interesting. Alright, enough of that.
I have the power of God and anime on my side! Wait,
When talking about minor Chaos Gods, Malal is always the first to be brought up. But there are many minor Chaos Gods in both fantasy and the 40k setting. These 2 are one of those gods, but seem to be only regulated to the Warhammer fantasy setting. Let's start with Nikoho. I hope I'm saying that right. Nikoho is the god of not believing in gods. No, really, he's the ultimate R-atheism user. So the way it works in Warhammer, if you have a large group of people believe in something really hard, that thing will manifest as maybe not a god, but as some sort of entity. The more people who believe in this thing, the more powerful that entity becomes. So what happens if you have a lot of people who really don't believe in any of the gods? You create the god of unbelief. Nikoho shouldn't exist. He is the entity that not only hates religion and gods, but actively does not think they exist while being a god himself. Because of this, Nikoho has a very small following and sometimes seems like he doesn't even want them around. He hardly ever directly manifests to his followers, but when he does, he takes the shape of an ordinary and honestly fucking creepy old man. Bolgasgrad is the only city in the Warhammer world where he is actively worshipped, much to his dismay. These names. Suvasan is like the ultimate troller. He is the chaos god of making sure plans go wrong. If you have plans to kill the emperor and take over the empire yourself, Suvasan is there to make sure your plot is revealed. If you are a Norscan raider planning to sail south to raid the coastline, Suvasan is there to make sure you're caught in a storm and drown. He will even take over cults that think they've been worshipping another god, just to reveal to them that they've been worshipping him this whole time. Just for laughs, I guess. When he manifests to his followers, it's usually as the thing they fear the most, or as the same race as whoever he is talking to, but horribly disfigured. Either way, he is always laughing. Both of these gods come from a page of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1st edition, so again, it's not 100% confirmed if these gods still exist or not, but honestly, I don't see why they can't. And that concludes part 2 of the Warhammer Fantasy Iceberg. Thanks for watching. Hopefully I won't be as lazy and get a part 3 out sooner than this. But in the meantime, like, subscribe, all that. And remember, Nikoho is always watching.